freedom is not just that I can do what I want. Freedom is the capacity to bring our emergent self into the moment and into an interrelatedness with the world. And freedom means to have a choice now, not to reproduce the past and call that freedom. That's not freedom.
Welcome to Point of Relation with Thomas Hübl, a podcast that illuminates the path to collective healing at the intersection of science and mysticism. This is the Point of Relation.
Hello and welcome to Point of Relation. My name is Thomas Hübl, and today I want to speak to something that I think many of us feel right now, that there's a lot of collective stress, collective and political and social fragmentation, polarization. And I think we all need, first of all, a good inner practice to stay kind of connected and in a way mature in our responses versus our reactivity. And to also be able to touch into like an emergent response, which means a response that has a future, that doesn't just reproduce what we already did in the past. And so the reason why I speak a lot about collective trauma is that we see, like same as an individual in an individual life, we develop these patterns, and our unconscious identifications with past pain create patterns, and those patterns keep repeating themselves. And I think many of us know how that feels when you have relationship arguments, when you have recurrent issues at work or in your experience of the social fabric, no matter what's your political agenda or direction. Or in any other place, even with our inner voices, with our inner processes, that there are recurrent thought pattern mindsets, emotional patterns, recurrent fears, anxieties, shame, anger, whatever, grief. And so similar as it's in our individual experience, the collective psyche, like the unconscious of our societies, the unconscious of our collective experience, has or is subject to the same process, the repetition compulsion of large patterns. And I think a sentence that describes this well is history repeats. Yeah, history repeats, and we see, when you look back in history, you see certain patterns that happen over and over again, conflicts that happen over and over again, or polarizations, political divides, and. So today I would love to speak again, given it's so up, and when we look at our news feeds, when we look at our social media feeds, how much polarization we see. And polarization, on the one hand, there's a symptom. And the symptom is we see polarization. But when you look a bit deeper, then you see, there is a polarizing or fragmenting force that creates the symptoms on the surface. Same as when we get triggered, we don't feel our trauma directly. We feel the effects of our trauma, the symptoms of our trauma. So when we use our triggers and say, first of all, when I get triggered by something, I check in with what's my relationship to my triggers? Do I think that I'm a bad person when I'm triggered and I should always be calm and connected and kind of, and then in a state of equanimity and openness? Or we are all human beings, we get triggered at times. Triggers are signposts to growth. And if I don't ignore my triggers, but I use my triggers as a developmental journey, then every time I get triggered, I can I can go deeper and check in with myself what's actually happening. And when we look a bit deeper what's actually happening, we will often find that we are not anymore responding to the world from a mature perspective, but we are actually reacting to the world. We are in a reactive mode that comes from younger aspects of ourselves, unintegrated younger parts that can get re-triggered. Because it seems like sometimes when we speak to people and then it's person A and then 2 weeks later it's person C, but it's the same trigger. So then we see, wow, it's actually not so related to the specificity of the situation. It's related to the specificity of my trigger. And all kinds of people can trigger that. Or all kinds of people can say things and I feel hurt, can say things and I feel scared, can say things and I feel ashamed. So it's not so specific often to the situation. It's more specific to my inner experience of the situation. And that's what we can change. That's why I often say the future has the power to rewrite the past. But when we say that, we can say yes, because the past is not just what happened a year ago, 10 years ago, 50 years ago. The past is also how we experienced what happened, how people experienced the Second World War, how people experience certain disruptions in the world. That's the frozen past. That's the trauma content that we can change. That the future, I can work on my childhood trauma, which is the past, but it's also how, as a child, I experienced the way I've been brought up. And so we always talk about what happened and how did we experience what happened. And what we experienced, that is subject to change. Because history is history. The course of events is the course of events. But the frozen past in us, the past that we couldn't integrate as learning, is still frozen in us and can still get triggered. And often does. And so I think many of us might know how that feels periodically when we get triggered. And also that then we respond to the world, not anymore from the potential of our intelligence. We react from past reactivity, fight, flight, freeze, fawn mechanisms. And they don't carry our potential. They don't carry our intelligence. They don't carry emergence. And you might see that we might argue in intimate relationship arguments or in work experiences. We said those things already, and now we are saying it again. And then we say, oh, but these things are not changing. So it's not that that's unique. It's repetitive. And so when we look at society, we also see that there are repetitive patterns. They maybe have a longer timeline. They're not maybe just that frequent. Some of them are, but some of them are longer. And so the repetition takes longer to reoccur. And obviously, otherwise we wouldn't say history repeats. We know those cycles. And that's why we need, I believe, two ways. I need an individual inner practice to work on my own inner software, basically, that is able to compute my daily experience. And the more fluid and integrated my perspective is, the more bandwidth I have to swim in complexity. And it's very important because we're living in a time that is becoming more and more complex. And we need to learn to swim in complexity. But in order to swim in complexity, we need an integrated self. And the more integrated is our self, the more the self is the cup for the world. The more integrated is the self, the more world can be hosted inside, which means I can stay related to the events that are happening. And if not, And then either I have a lot of great values and ideas, but I can't live them. So intellectually, I understand many things. I read many books. I heard many podcasts. I did many things. I intellectually fantastic. I have it figured out. But actually, in daily life, I can't live it. My understanding, cognitive understanding, and my reality are two. So that means my practice is to embody what I know and to learn to live that emotionally, physically, relationally, ancestrally, spiritually. At the same time, the other defense against complexity is simplifying reality, like a simplification of the world. Because if I cannot swim in complexity, which means I swim in a river and I learn to swim skillfully, and I am interdependent with that complexity. I'm interdependent. The complexity of the world is not other. If it's other, I'm overwhelmed. And it's okay to be overwhelmed, but it's just important that I know what the othering of complexity is. The complexity is not out there. Not that the world is complex, the world out there is complex. No, that's already a symptom of some kind of overwhelm on some level of myself, that I am not able to host the world in myself. So the intra-existence of the world and the existence of the world seemingly outside of me are two. So less of the world can land in me than actually exists. And the more integrated my self is, I'll be open to learn. I'll have access to emergence, and I'll be in a fluid relationship with complexity. So the integration and the maturation of self is very important, and we need practices to integrate ourselves. And that's a lifelong journey. It's not just a quick fix. We are becoming more mature. As adults, we keep learning and developing, and we become wiser. How do we become wiser? By integrating the difficulties that we meet. We become wiser. And eventually, if we really if our soul's journey polishes ourselves, and we face our challenges and integrate those into learning, then eventually we'll maybe become an elder in society. We'll become a wise one. And so when the disembodiment, like great ideas, but the cup is still too small, but I have great ideas, or the simplification, like grasping a piece of reality and say, okay, this is how things are. Because the interdependence with complexity is that it's not that I know everything about complexity. That's also not the point. It's like as if one part of the supercomputer tries to fully know how the supercomputer works and tries to control the supercomputer's complexity. No, but I have access to the data of the supercomputer because I'm swimming in it. That's a different flow state. And when I'm in a flow state, I'm swimming in complexity, which means sometimes I'll need to learn. Sometimes I have something to teach. I will manage to deal with the challenges that come up in my life. I will reach out when I need to reach out. I will figure it out myself when I need to figure it out myself. So I will be in a more fluid relationship to the experiences and the unfolding of my life. And so that inner work is very precious. And at the same time, if individuals and the ecosystems are not two, they're interdependent, it means, first of all, that means that my inner development will become an ecosystemic property. So I will form my ecosystem in relationship to many people relative to my maturity. If I'm often regressive and if I'm often in reactive modes, that's how my life's going to look like. If I am in responsive modes, that's how my life's going to look like. Because there's more compassion, there's more clarity, there's more clear yes and no, there's more embodiment, there's more accountability, there's more generosity, warmth, care. There are many qualities of maturity that will co-create the atmosphere of the ecosystem around me. All the people that I'm, and not only people, all the plants, all the animals, the planet, the ecosystem that I'm part of. And that's, I believe, also true for the ecosystem itself. So the collective dimension, how collectives are being hurt and fragmented through large-scale impacts, that equally needs attention, and that needs attention from us. It's the usness, it's the we. It's not only me being part of a we, it's the capacity to build collective witnessing spaces, collective rituals, a collective architecture that is able to process the larger wounds, the blow to the social fabric, as Kai Erikson called collective trauma. It's a blow and a fragmentation of the social fabric of our society. And the after effects of that blow is our homework. The legacy of immigration, the legacy of racism, the legacy of a Native American genocide, a Holocaust, genocides around the world, wars, the First World War, the Second World War, you just name it, from Asia to Africa to Australia to Latin America to anywhere in the world. Of course, North America, we see wounds, colonialism all around the world. So our societies have large-scale scars, carry large-scale scars. We have been born into those, and we normalized very often the blow to the social fabric. That's the society that we know. We don't know it any other way because we grew up in it. We have been born into this world. So that's the world we know. And so there is the integrated part of this world that's anyway emergent, because integrated reality is emergent, and non-integrated reality is non-emergent, is repetitive, keeps reproducing itself. And I believe we often find ourselves fighting and arguing with the repetition compulsion of life, which is a waste of time, because like this we can't change. And what helps us to change is to build an architecture, to build rituals and healing spaces that are able, where we come together and we say, as citizens, we have the responsibility to take care of the legacy that we have been born into. That's not over. And we can tell ourselves whatever we want. Let's just look into the future. Let's see the brighter future. Let's just go. Yeah, that's great. But the repetition compulsion means that it's like you're driving on the highway and you see a sign of exit 51 goes to a certain town. And after 10 kilometers, you see exit 51, it goes to a certain town. And after 10 kilometers, you see exit 51 and it goes to a certain town, and so on and so on. So the past that is not integrated will show up in front of you again. And there is no way out except slowing down, paying attention to the past that is recurrent, is repetitive, not the past that many people call history, because integrated history is the present moment. Integrated history doesn't bother us in that sense. The unintegrated history is interfering with my experience of now. It's the anxieties from the past that are interfering with my decisions today. It's the anxieties of the past that are the basis of some of the social and political and other decisions that we make now. It's not that we take those decisions or we make those decisions out of freedom. We tell ourselves that we are really free, but freedom is not just that I can do what I want. Freedom is the capacity to bring our emergent self into the moment and into an interrelatedness with the world. And freedom means to have a choice now, not to reproduce the past and call that freedom. That's not freedom. That's being bound unconsciously to behaviors, mindsets, and ways of acting and living that are imprinted by the past. To slowly come to a conclusion here, so what I'm pointing to today is, on the one hand, the beauty and the importance of doing our individual integration work to mature our self, to integrate ourselves, to be more steadily in a grown-up perspective. And from that grown-up perspective, we have a much wider fluidity, freedom, choice, responsiveness and relatedness and resilience to respond to the current state of the world. And that we create the citizen's responsibility to say we all have been born, no matter in which country around the world, we have been born into a legacy that our ancestors, the people that walked before us, couldn't integrate, were hurt, or created trauma. That's part of our job. Somebody needs to clean up the living room. And so volunteering and participating in cleaning up the collective living room will help us to make different choices, will help us to create a new movement or an integrated understanding of who we are as societies, who we are as a humanity, who we are as a planet. And I think that's really exciting. But we have to have rituals for this. We have to have an architecture that we build for this, because that architecture doesn't exist. It doesn't exist kind of on a mainstream level. And so when I, as a citizen, say, yes, I'll do my part, I don't have to clean up the whole living room, because there are billions of other people that are living in the same living room that we call humanity. But if every one of us does some, or at least enough of us do some, then the living room will be cleaner and cleaner, or brighter and brighter, more open, more loving, more compassionate, less fragmented, less polarized. And we will be able to see each other better, because there is not so much fog in the living room. And the communication will be improved, the global collaboration will be improved, the fairness and the integration of different levels of societies will be improved. I think there's so many win-win-win effects to cleaning up our collective living room. And so I will speak more, especially to the second part in the next solo episode, of point of relation. But for now, I will leave you with these inspirations today, and also see where you find yourself in your inner journey and in your we ability. To be part of a we is not just me in a group or me in society that is around me. The we ability has many layers to grow until we feel again that we are like an interdependent net. And that interdependent net has a lot of flow dimensions to it, and can create a wonderful collaboration to solve contemporary issues. And so I will come back to that. I'll leave you with this inspiration today, and hopefully it speaks to your own um, understanding, desire, how we can, how as a collective, we can take care of the legacies that we do, and and help in a bigger and brighter world. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Point of Relation with Thomas Hübl. Stay connected and get updates about new episodes by visiting our website, pointofrelationpodcast.com, and by subscribing to the Thomas Hübl YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share about us with your community on social media. Thank you. We appreciate your support.